It's amazing how long a figment of the imagination can continue, especially if people in power encourage others to believe it, even as they undermine the truths and fail to do the work necessary to keep that figment real. The business environment in the United States today, often referred to as the economy, we're going to call it the economy, right, with a big capital T and a big letter E, is now structured so that skilled workers are underpaid while expensive, low-quality goods are manufactured domestically and overwhelmingly imported from foreign countries. So you got high-skilled workers making cheap goods that don't last or performing the work necessary to import that from foreign countries. Very few Americans gauge wealth by their ability to buy a series of ugly and poorly made items for prices they can hardly afford. They also don't gauge success by having to be forced to stay at home and barely be able to take care of their children and barely be able to buy the food that they need and barely be able to pay their rent and barely be able to keep their fuel going. That's not success to them. They don't want to do it. We're talking about like 100 million people. The majority of the population of the United States daily does things they don't want to do. And in the past, we could move around, but we can't do that these days. The fact that the economy is based on underpaying skilled workers while selling cheap goods, imported from the slave economies, because it's even worse outside the country, forever rising prices. Do you notice the prices have been going up for this stuff? It's not, they haven't been getting any better. It's a future that's neither secure, predictable, nor safe for any of the participants. But in the end, the people that are running the thing, they're taking their cream every day. And they're taking care of their kids. And the majority, talking about like 80% of the population in the United States, is struggling. Let's consider the results of continuing down this ruinous road where an ever-dwindling number of individuals and corporate entities, who are now known as persons, which is crazy, gather all of the currency to themselves but do not spend it except investing in each other. There will be short-term gains that will be followed by long-term pain, and we're beginning to feel that pain, just noticing it. Right now, the specter of a major depression might be at bay, but what we are seeing is not extended economic growth, but an extended depression. It just keeps going on at a certain level. The only growth that's occurring is among those that move money, which is why manufacturing companies mostly have formed their own banks. They loan themselves money to make the things that they're making to sell to others. We're already seeing a pattern of reduced innovation at the workplace. Most every single worker at this time in the United States does exactly what they're told to do and only exactly as they're told to do it. We saw a tragic example of that in Irwin, Tennessee, when the owner of a company reportedly told workers, hey, stay. As a flood threatened, they did so, and they died. They did what they were told to do. But they can't do it anymore. Underpaid workers lack the resources and the motivation to innovate. I mean, if you're barely earning enough to make your food on your table and clothe your kids, you're going to be a little leery of changing the way things are done or even to confront your boss. This stifles technological advancement that used to take place all over the place in this society, and long-term economic growth, which also used to take place all over in this society. It's one thing to tell workers to train themselves, but if the training is equal to 20% of their yearly wages before taxes, they're not likely to reach for that goal. They simply can't afford to do it. Just as in the 19th century, we're seeing an overall decrease in productivity. Unhappy, hungry, and undercompensated workers are less productive. The invisible slowdown may be good for order, but it destroys morale and output, and efficiency suffer. Don't forget, people can't access medical care these days anymore. You got a longer life, but it's longer and more painful in some cases. As workers find now that they no longer can afford the overpriced goods that they produce, or even the cheap stuff that's imported from abroad and made here, consumer demand decreases. Why would you keep buying it if you're not getting anything out of it? This hurts all business, but starts with the smaller local businesses. The combined impact slows down the economy. Every city and town in this country has seen small businesses go out of business because big businesses come in, and it's not working out. We already see what the brain drain can do. In the United States, skilled workers seek opportunities anywhere they can get them. Loyalty to a company is out the window as it is clear that employers do not have loyalty to employees. Now, the United States suffers from another impact of brain drain, in that individuals in countries that are poor, like India, Pakistan, Chile, Peru, and others, move to the United States at the drop of a hat in order to earn more money. The H-1B visa and all its associated work visas, that's such an avenue for that kind of activity. It's very popular, more popular than you would imagine. There's H-1B, H-2B, C, A, B. There's like 54 of them or something like that. Yeah, they don't talk about that on TV the other day. Now, there's been a general decline in overall paychecks for Americans as companies import those workers. They import them from overseas, and it's become obvious over time they're not actually importing the best and the brightest. That's not what's happening. The best and the brightest over there are sending the kind of best and brightest over here. Anybody that can fill these positions or is willing to do it, they're going to send them over there, and they're going to do anything they can to make sure that they fill out the right paperwork and get qualified for the work that they're going to do, even if they don't know how to do it. Okay. The ones that take advantage of these international arrangements are often more clever at escaping the poverty they were in, and they'll do anything, including lie and misrepresent themselves to get away. And I'm not saying they all do that, but I will tell you this. I've met quite a few programmers, quite a few technical experts who were trained as doctors and lawyers and all sorts of things in other countries. And they get here, they take the test, they can't pass them, so they get another job, but because they say they've got a degree. But you get a college degree when you're like in 12th grade. When you get out of high school or 2 years of high school in some of these countries, they give you a university degree. And they come over here with a university degree, and these guys, they accept it. Because the people will be asking like 1/3 or 1/2 of what they need to get paid. Plus, oftentimes, they're in cahoots with the employment company. Now, this leaves when they do that, even though these people aren't the finest and best, when these people that are motivated, when they leave, that leaves their home company bereft of them and keeps lower skilled Americans and also higher skilled and motivated innovators out of jobs in the American market, in American companies. If you add in the fraud and abuse of the program itself, it becomes a net negative for everybody concerned. It's not helping anybody. All right. A country that depends on an economy where skilled workers are underpaid while expensive low-quality goods are manufactured domestically and overwhelmingly, over time, imported from foreign countries finds itself in a position of diminishing global power and prestige. What does that mean? Well, that natural resources and those expensive low-quality goods will become even more and more expensive. It means that the country will no longer be seen as competitive, let alone innovative. It will suffer in trade with countries that put their citizens first and have maintained a culture of investment in workers while prioritizing quality in goods. Even if they're not living fancy, they're going to start gaining power. This ensure basic business reality will lead to currency problems, and even native companies will opt to take advantage of the difference of value between the suffering currency and a stronger currency. They're going to take money out of the country. In arbitrage, or the trading of money and currency, it will become not just a necessary means to conduct business, but will become an industry to itself, and that's what's happened. At this time, the economy in the United States has spawned imaginary currencies of various kinds. Some formed from electronic signals alone, or pictures, photos, or just promises. Cryptocurrencies are used to lock up this imaginary value for other problems that beset the economy, including black market activity, the drug trade war, exploitation, and even slavery. Yeah, there's modern slavery. It's become so severe in El Salvador, where a long-term dictator has resorted to creating cryptocurrency. He's using a giant array of computers and devices powered by a volcano. He's using a volcano. Okay? And prices for food and other goods continue to skyrocket in the country while basic medical care and education go wanting. And where do you think those people that want stuff are going to? They're going where they think the stuff is that they can get, and that's the United States of America. And even as the United States continues to fund the government of El Salvador with cash payments, the dictator continues to undermine the International Financial Forum and expelling automatically his own citizens where they go to the United States. The currency of the United States, which is the dollar, is facing devaluation. That means it's worth a lot less than it was before, and way less across the world. It's become less more and more each day, as a matter of fact, and it's on the verge in some parts of the world to be considered worthless altogether. It pretty much is. As this spreads, it becomes weaker and weaker, and more dollars flow back into the United States because they don't want them, thereby generating further inflation and devaluation so that poorly made expensive goods become even more expensive and we can't afford to make them. As this process continues, the United States is in a state of having the economy. That's what it's called. Now, let's be clear, in clear decline. As a result, whatever influence it had in the past is being diminished or completely liquidated in some areas. And are you really interested in international influence? Really? You want to take care of your family and yourself and your friends and your community? Or do you want to have international influence, which involves you sending people to die and fight and kill? I don't know. People are just not going to be, and those folks out there are not going to be receptive to demands or even requests from a diminishingly poor and more violent United States. It's not begun to happen yet in the United States. There are clearly incidents and circumstances leaning towards serious social and political unrest here in the country right now. And that's because the gap between the wealthy and the poor is increasing. Most of those who have wealth in the United States, they hide it. They also hide themselves, obscured behind a dizzying array of complementary ownerships. The real owners of corporations remain unknown. Their homes and places of residence and work are often not even listed on maps or in registries of any kind. You can't find these people. They rule from places of secrecy, and there's a bunch of them. About 30 years ago, a marketing ploy by Cotton Incorporated to get people to wear more cotton clothing, which was then primarily casual and work clothing, worked, and now most workplaces have a dress code that is perpetually casual. Here's an example of what's going on. This has broken down the visibility of the more affluent at work, as well as because everyone's dressed about the same. Even more so, when dress codes were strict and required professionals to wear suits and ties, you could tell who was in charge and who was making the money, and then you could model yourself after them. But they're not looking for that anymore. Even the extremely wealthy project an appearance of middle or low class on television and when public, when they're around, even as they extract the very powers of life from those other classes of workers that make it possible for them to live a carefree life. The gap between the wealthy and the poor in the U.S. has expanded so much and has become so codified that it's understood that becoming wealthy for anyone in the United States is impossible. If you're not wealthy already, it's impossible to get wealthy unless you do something fabulous. And it could be anything. And let's not throw in the guys who got sort of became, no, they were rich already. Now, the American dream is presently being decried as being unreal. It's unreachable for nearly everyone who is not already wealthy or has not placed themselves in perpetual debt. The American dream of owning your own home, all the other dreams, though, owning a car, a farm, nice clothing, quality goods, all of those dreams as well are being extinguished as wealth becomes concentrated and frozen amongst an even smaller number of people who are proving to be unimaginative, cruel, and short-sighted. This is leading the political and social unrest as power circles built and maintained through crime and cruel behaviors that are animalistic increase their place in communities across the country. At the same time, a slow response from organized labor, which has seen its influence shrink, resorting to disjointed strikes and protests, do more to disrupt economic activity than achieving any lasting goals or writings of social wrongs. Extremism has shown its face, but in general has been subdued up until now. Now that we're going to get this new administration in, extremism is hitting the big time. As time goes on and the situation worsens, these limited and fractious breakouts of extremisms of many different kinds become more sophisticated and explosive after each successive iteration. The United States is already in a destabilized state and is maintaining order at the good graces of the very people who are being exploited and cheated. While the economy may continue to provide short-term benefits to the select few who have pushed themselves into power, the situation is clearly unsustainable. It's unsustainable. It can't keep going. It's not going to last. If you can see something is not going to last, it has reached its useful life. It has already been terminated. The process for putting it aside, though, has not been completed. While there are different views on where a nation's true power lies, it is clear that a nation cannot be powerful if it degrades its workers and reduces every citizen to a worker with an uncertain future, few prospects, no money, no means to get medical care, and no hope for their children, and no belief in the future. This is the United States of America, And this is going to be changed.